And joining me now is Democratic Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey. Okay, Senator, there is so much I want to get to with you, but I just want to start. I've been reflecting on the last couple of weeks, as I know you have been, and you've been very busy. I think Trump's approach so far this term aspects of it seem kind of predictable, but to me, what Elon Musk is doing right now isn't entirely what I anticipated. Has anything surprised you about his actions?
I mean, I think what has surprised me is the complicity of my Republican colleagues who often have been champions of these ideas of privacy. This is Elon Musk, who is one of our biggest government contractors, one of our big military contractors, who now has unfettered access to the most personal information, from FEMA information about people's homes, houses, to medical information, information on the medicines people take, tax information, Social Security information. And get this, we are in a time of AI. People are saying, oh, it's just read-only. He can still scrape data, get pattern recognition, get predictive analytics, feed it into AI models, and what he can do is simply revolutionary by having access to the information. Its value on the open market, because other contractors would love to have this, is billions of dollars. There's no oversight, there's no checks, there's no transparency to what he's doing, and you hear crickets from Republicans. You hear silence. And so this is offensive to Americans. This is violative of values we hold sacrosanct, like our private personal information should not be for a very conflicted contractor. So this is one of these things that to me is astonishing. And we're going to continue to fight him in court because I think he is violating privacy, violating the law by having access to this kind of sensitive data. And it's something that we all as Americans should be shouting down and stopping.
No question about it. And thank you for outlining exactly how it will impact people, because this is not just something that's happening within the walls of Washington. This is going to impact millions of people across the country. You just mentioned the fight in the courts, and there has been certainly some successes in pushing back on Musk in the courts. Over the weekend, there has been a couple of actions, but he tweeted last night or retweeted a message last night suggesting he should defy court orders. The Democrats, you have been very vocal, but the Democrats are in the minority in the Senate. You mentioned the Republicans have been quiet like crickets. What happens if he defies it?
Well, then we really do have a constitutional crisis. It's where our separations of powers, our checks and balances, that he starts more and more, we're seeing this, wanting to be autocratic or dictatorial. We see this in other countries when a executive power starts to overreach their authority, and he is, by the way, doing things that are spelled out as Congress's duties. And then when the courts stop him, how we've settled things from the Reagan administration to the Obama administration, to defy court orders brings about a constitutional crisis. And so what Elon Musk is saying there is that we should not be a nation of three branches of government with checks and balances. We should be an authoritarian dictatorship, and that should scare everyone, because that's when democracies begin to unravel. We must check him. We must hold him up. We must stop them, and we must use every means necessary in a nonviolent way to do what is necessary to stop him from turning our democracy into what we're seeing in other governments like Russia's.
We've seen some significant efforts to push back over the course. There's been protests across the country, here in Washington, D.C. as well. We've seen congressional Democrats push back. We watched your effort to hold the Senate floor overnight this week in opposition of Trump's OMB director, Russ Vought, who did eventually get through. But I know you said this morning that you guys are going to do whatever it takes. You just kind of reiterated that to stop Donald Trump. For people watching right now, what does that mean specifically? What does that look like? What specific things can they look out for?
Yeah, well, let me just give the nod to the fact that elections matter. You know, if we had picked up one more Senate seat, for example, 20,000 votes in Pennsylvania, we could have stopped Hegseth from being, because remember, 3 Republicans went. So every congressional seat, every Senate seat, people don't think it at the time. That's the time we really need people to leaning in, because the consequences for that we're seeing right now. We do not control the House, and we're in a minority in the Senate, and we don't control the White House. That gives them tremendous power, even within the bounds of how our democracy is supposed to work. But that does not mean we are powerless, that that we don't have agency. Democrats are going to fight in 4 ways. One is in the courts. We've discussed that already. Over 42 cases have been filed. We've won over a dozen of them already, and we're going to continue to fight him in the courts. The next 2 ways are legislatively and using our oversight power. Senators do have power in the forms of our procedure and our oversight to just slow things down, to force people to take a look at it. Kash Patel's a great example. Just by postponing his floor vote over a week, we've seen more information coming out, like him receiving thousands and thousands of dollars from a Russian-implicated news agency that literally he took money from, that has done other documentaries that are pro-Putin and more. And so that's very important for us to be able to slow things down, get a deeper look, to be able to provide oversight. But the last thing that we have to do, the 4th bucket, that's not only something that we have an obligation to do, but every American does, is to shine a light, to elevate, to communicate, to talk about what's going. I am very happy this last week that Democratic senators have had millions of more engagement with their content online, that it's exposing what the Trump administration is doing. And why do I know this works? Well, the collective voice of outrage during his first administration stopped him from pulling down the Affordable Care Act and people's health care, people with pre-existing conditions and others. And I know it works this time because just 2 weeks ago, when Donald Trump froze federal spending to programs like ones that give funding for our police officers and our firefighters, or suicide prevention hotlines, or feeding programs for our elderly, there was such a public outrage and so much content was elevated online that the Trump administration stopped in their tracks, and then the law kicked in and we were able to get an injunction against him doing that. All of the buckets of our work in coordination to be a bulwark against what he's going to do. But I return to where I started. They won multiple elections and they have a lot more authority, but that does not mean we are powerless, that we don't have agency, and most importantly, all of us, especially us elected, but all of us have a responsibility in this time and this climate to speak up, to stand up, to be activists against these kind of illegal actions of the Trump administration.
Senator Cory Booker, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.